So one thing that you talk to a lot of people about, and I think is super um, just real and kind of all over right now is like anxiety. And, obviously COVID the last year and a half now, I mean, so many people, you're in your house, you're locked up, you can't do as much. It's just an interesting world. And I guess I would be curious, like for anybody, let's say that's listening to this and feels that they do have that like anxiety, what would be like a tip or two that you would give them on kind of just like getting through that or walking through that? I'm not someone that, fortunately, I haven't ever felt like I had a ton of anxiety in my life. So I'm not the person to give the advice on this, but I'd be curious for you, like if someone's dealing with that anxiety, what are a few things they can do to kind of get through it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love working with anxiety. I mean, obviously, just my own lived experience of it. And my husband's very open about his experience with anxiety too,
Love
because I
that.
think men and mental health is a whole other thing we could have a
Yeah.
whole conversation about. But the big thing with anxiety is exposure. Like I just said a minute ago, like, oh, you're giving me a nice little exposure.
Yeah.
No, because we have to behaviorally show ourselves that we can get through the thing we're afraid of. Like the thing
Mm.
is, like you mentioned, like our brains are so smart. Like that's why, like, yes, mindset work is important, but the mind is like an excellent BS sniffer. And if you like try and positive talk your way out of something, if you're anxious, your mind is going to say, like, well, I don't think you can actually do it. So I'm a big, big advocate of like behaviorally show yourself that you can do it. So if you're finding that you're having trouble leaving the house, like I think a lot of people are having more, what we call agoraphobia of like really struggling with leaving the house, gradually expose your way up, right? Like, can you go outside for 10 minutes today? Can you go
Yeah.
to the grocery store? Can you go to the movies? Start to build your way up. Don't flood yourself. Like, a lot of times we push ourselves too much and then we have like a trauma response because it's
Yeah.
just too much too soon. So you got to have like a little bit of a hierarchical ladder and work your way up.
Okay.
But behaviorally make those changes and then the brain starts to buy in of like, okay, yeah, you gave me the proof that you actually could do that, and then we see the
Right.
mindset change.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, an often example I give people is it's like building your brain muscle, right?
Yeah.
And it's like building your anxiety muscle, we could call it. It's like if you went to the gym once and lifted a few dumbbells and tried to lift like the 100-pound dumbbells and left, and you're like, I'm going to be fit for life. It's like that. Yeah, that is not the formula to success.
Yeah.
It's like you got to go day in and day out, do a little bit more the next day, a little bit more the next day. And it's like, I think, with anxiety, it's like if you can look at having anxiety and saying, how can I just get one more rep in today? And
Yes.
and it might be a rep with the 2.5-pound dumbbell, and that's phenomenal because
Mhm.
that's better than not doing any reps or looking at the dumbbell, right? It's like you got to get those reps in, and as you do that enough, you'll work through it. So I really do love that.
Yeah, it's just like you were saying, those little incremental bits make a huge, huge difference. And not avoiding, like that is how anxiety wins, is when you avoid your life. Like when you
Mhm.
say, like, well, I'm just not ready to date yet, or like, I don't like my job, but it'd be too hard to find another one. That is avoidance. And avoidance reinforces anxiety and it makes the waves look even bigger each time. So you got to ride the wave out and see that the wave breaks. That's how we actually move through the anxiety.
So how, let's say there's someone listening to this and they're going, I'm not avoiding anything, and they're looking left and right and they're going, but really I am. Uh, how do we get them? How do we get that? How do we give them a friendly nudge to say, get past this avoidance? It's freaking time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think you've got to pay attention to like your indicators, right? And when I say indicators, I mean values. So much of my work is helping people recognize what do you value. And that sounds so simple, right? But most people, if you sat them down, they actually would kind of maybe struggle to tell you what really matters to them in their lives. I
Yeah.
love doing a values card sort with clients, and people can even Google it online and print it out. I've got a free downloadable we can share for people.
Nice.
But you've got to know like your top 10 values. And if you're not living in alignment with those values day to day, like if your job doesn't reflect that, if you, let's say you love family and friends and you're not spending any time with them, there's some data right there for you that you've got to make a
Yeah.
shift. You can't just be a bystander to your life and let your life happen to you.
Mm. Less